Good morning, Year 11, and welcome today to your screencast for Conflict and Tension. And today we will be looking at the Abyssinia crisis. So you can find information on the Abyssinia crisis in your Conflict and Tension quiz booklets, but this is more of like an overview in the lead up to your exam, because I think the Abyssinian crisis will play a really important part in your exam this year. So, the Abyssinian crisis, then, before we even look at that, we need to understand Italy as a nation. And it really starts with the man in the center of the image here, and he's called Benito Mussolini. He is the leader of Italy. He becomes the leader of Italy in the early 1920s. And Italy are kind of quite aggrieved after the First World War. They didn't get much reward from Britain and France for switching sides. And Mussolini takes over and he becomes the dictator of Italy. So he is basically Italy's version of Hitler, minus the overt hatred of the Jewish people. Now, Mussolini's aim, a little bit like Hitler, if we think of Lauder, and Hitler's was kind of your living space, that was definitely kind of a little bit of what Mussolini wanted. He wanted to be almost bring a rebirth, a renaissance, if you like, to Italy, and bring back Italy as the Roman Empire. And you can see that in his imagery here. And if we think about that, we do have an example. We have an example of the Corfu crisis. So if we think of where Corfu is, it's in Greece. And we can see here how close Italy and Greece are together. So we know that in the 1920s, Italy invade Greece, despite Italy being a part of the League of Nations. And the League of Nations actually blames Greece for this and makes Greece pay Italy money. Now, this is important because it just tells us kind of about Mussolini's aims, what Italy kind of is, and actually the fact that even though Italy remembers the League of Nations, they don't really care about the League of Nations. We can see that as early as the 1920s. We can see again Mussolini dressed as a Roman emperor, marching forwards through Corfu, kind of symbolizing, Italy's right for dominance and Italy's aim. So that's in the 1920s then, and that gives us some background to what's going to happen in the future. It tells us that Mussolini is going to ignore the League again, and this happens in the 1930s. So the Abyssinian crisis happens in 1935. At the same time, if we think about it, as Hitler has just taken the Tsar and he's rearmed Germany. The Manchuria crisis was 3 years ago. So the League of Nations has lost a little bit of power, if you like. So on the screen here, you can see that we've got where Italy is and where Abyssinia was. Not anymore, but where Abyssinia was. So it's modern day Ethiopia. And what we can see here is it's just a map. Okay, it symbolizes where they both are in the world at the time, and the red circle is where Italy would launch their ships to invade Abyssinia. I'll begin the invasion of Abyssinia. But why does Mussolini do this? Why does he invade Abyssinia in 1935? Well, it can be linked back to this event, and if we think about America, it can be linked back to the Great Depression. Italy are really suffering because of the Great Depression, as are all nations across the world at the time. So what's important to know here is that Abyssinia is rich in resources, it's rich in material, and if Italy invade, they can have that material, they can have that resources, and they can reboost their economy. So that's one reason, and the main reason in my opinion. The second reason that we have is, and hopefully this comes up on your screen, the stressor, and I can never remember if it's 1A or 2 S's or 1S, the stressor front. I think it's 1S actually. And what's important about the stressor front is that a couple of years earlier, in the early 1930s, Britain, who is here, France, and Italy have all agreed to join together to stop Germany. So Mussolini knows that Britain and France want to stop Germany. And Britain and France will have a choice if Italy invade Abyssinia. They can stop Italy, but lose Italy as an ally against Hitler, which they don't want to do, or they can let Italy continue with Abyssinia and keep them as allies against Germany. So it's really, really important, this agreement. So Mussolini has this feeling that it's not going to be a problem. Britain and France don't want to lose me as an ally, so they'll allow me to do this. And there are definitely other reasons as well, but those are the two I would focus on if asked a question about Abyssinia. The reasons why is because the stress front, we've learned about that before, and the Great Depression is such a big event that impacts so many things that it's easy for you to remember as well. So the Italian invasion begins then in 1935, and we can see here Italian troops, they have their weapons, their guns, and they use tanks. Unfortunately, though, against the Abyssinians, we can see that the Abyssinians here are armed with spears and shields. So, not the greatest defence, and Italy really begin a complete and utter bombardment of Italian forces, of Abyssinian forces, and they kill thousands. And if we think about why this creates tension, it obviously creates tension for the Abyssinian people because they're being attacked. It obviously creates tension for the League of Nations because a member of the League of Nations and a key member, a member of the council, has declared war. And the aim of the League of Nations is to stop wars. It's a massive, massive disaster for the League of Nations, really. And they've not just declared war, they've done it in a horrific and brutal way. They've picked on the weakest army and they're killing. They also use gas weapons on Abyssinians, which is banned in 1925, the use of gas weapons, and a horrendous way to die. So again, this brutality that's shown, it's not just the fact that they've broken the Convention of the League of Nations to stop war, it's the absolute, brutality and barbarity that they've done it with. So what do the League of Nations do? Well, they follow their covenant, and they try mitigation, which is your talking, which is this. That fails because Italy just ignore them. They then morally condemn them. That fails because Italy ignores them. And now we're going to have a look at the economic sanctions. So before Abyssinia, we can see the lines on the screen. The United States and the United Kingdom, France, Austria, all the countries that are part of the League of Nations. So we'll use the United Kingdom as an example of the League of Nations. The League of Nations and the United States are both trading with Italy. They're both trading money, for example, and they're both trading coal. And we can see that from the lines there going back and forth towards Italy. So what Britain decides, what the League of Nations decide to do is that when Italy invade Abyssinia, they're going to say, right, we're going to use our moral condemnation and we're going to use our covenant, and moral condemnation does not work, mitigation does not work, so we're going to use economic sanctions, and we are going to stop trading money in terms of like gold and things like that with Italy. So they do that, but Italy aren't bothered. Because if we look at the lines, Italy can still trade gold and things of monetary value, so things with gold, like gold, with the United States. So they still have a really strong trade partner. And if we think about the United States, even though it's the Great Depression, that'd help out both sides. And the United States is a big nation with lots of factories. So, it's going to be quite positive for Italy that they don't need the League of Nations. They can just carry on trading with the United States. And the League of Nations realise this, and now they have a big question to ask. Do we now stop trading coal to the black line? And if they do that, we can see coming from Italy, the black line, Italy are just going to continue to trade with the United States. So the League of Nations, if they stop trading coal, won't stop Italy, because they still trade the United States, but it also damages the countries of the League of Nations because they're during a Great Depression and they're not getting money for coal, which makes their economy suffer even more. So what the League of Nations decide to do is, we'll stop trading things of monetary value like gold, but we're not going to stop trading coal because coal's too important for us. It makes us too much money. Coal is a massive power source at the time. That means that Italy's naval battleships are ready to go. They use the coal, they're powered up, and the battleships are ready. So there, the League of Nations has failed, hasn't it? It's failed because it's selfish, because it doesn't want to lose money because of the Great Depression. Kind of understandable, but we can really hammer them home there. And the fact that if they'd stopped transporting coal, Italy would have struggled to fuel those ships. But that's not what happened. So if we look at the map now, we can see the fact that we've got Italy in the red circle at the top. At the bottom, we've got Abyssinia, so modern-day Ethiopia, but Abyssinia. And if we track the route here, what needs to happen for Italy to invade Abyssinia with their warships is they need to go down this route to get to Ethiopia. And the purple circle represents a really, really small canal, because it doesn't look like it if you look at the world map. It looks like the land is joined there, but it's not. And if we look at it here, a bit of a zoomed in version of the purple circle, we can see there is a tiny sliver from Port Said all the way down to this bit here, Al-Kabit, and then it turns into a canal, and it turns into a place called the Suez Canal. And at the time of the Abyssinian crisis, 2 countries own the Suez Canal and access to the Suez Canal: Britain and France. So Britain and France now have the opportunity to stop Italian ships, and it would be easy for them because the Suez Canal is so small. They could close it off, and if we look at the landmass, you could have soldiers on both sides and weapons on both sides, and the naval ships of Italy would be destroyed. So it would be easy for them to do, and it would stop the invasion of Abyssinia, and it would stop war from Italy invading Abyssinia. So, as I've just said, if Britain and France were to close off the canal, Italian ships would go. The ships, I would have assumed, would be unlikely to try and force their way through and go to war with Britain and France, so they would have to return. So they would do an outward turn and they would come back to Italy, and the crisis would be averted because they can't get to Abyssinia. However, that is not what happens. What happens is that Britain and France do not close the Suez Canal. And they do this because of the stressor front. They don't want to lose Italy as an ally against Germany, so they allow the Italian soldiers, Italian Navy to go through and to attack Ethiopia. Another failure of the League of Nations. The League of Nations could have stopped this. The 2 main countries in the League of Nations, Britain and France, they could have stopped this, but they didn't. A failure on their part to stop war and to uphold the main aim of the League of Nations, to stop war. But the war continued, and late 1935 comes around, and Britain and France need this crisis to be over because it's causing them too much trouble. So 2 men meet, and it's the foreign secretaries of Britain and France, and we can see them here. They're called Hawar and Laval. And Hawar and Laval meet, and they say to each other, we are going to allow Italy to have Abyssinia. We are not going to get involved anymore at all. No economic sanctions, no kind of stopping money to trade, nothing. Just let them have them. We need them against Germany. We need Italy against Germany. In private, it's still bad for the League of Nations, isn't it? Because they are basically saying the League of Nations is pointless. Because we're basically allowing war to happen and allowing a nation of the League of Nations to go to war. But it gets worse for them, because it gets leaked to the press and it causes absolute uproar. We can see here Hawar quits as foreign chief to save the cabinet. So basically Hawar had permission from the Prime Minister at the time, and the Prime Minister says, listen, if you don't quit now, we're going to be forced to resign by the public, because the public are furious about this. They see this as a betrayal of Abyssinians. The world see this as a betrayal of Abyssinians. Because here we have two nations with the ability to have stopped the naval ships with coal bans, to have stopped the naval ships with the Suez Canal, but then openly admitting that Italy should have Abyssinia, when the whole point is to give these nations independence, to give these nations like Abyssinia freedom, to stop war. They are basically saying we are not going to back the League of Nations' main aim. And you can see here, it's junk. This idea of to bring peace, aka give Italy Abyssinia, is junk. It's pathetic. And we can also see that from the cartoons of the time as well. Here we can see Hawar and Laval just reading their pact, quite happy. And we can see here in the middle Mussolini going, the League? The League is contemptible. The League can do nothing. And he knows the League can do nothing because of the Stress Front and the Great Depression. And we've got poor Abyssinia here saying, because they've got rights and wrongs of Abyssinia, which says to me they represent probably Abyssinia, and then they've got this bit which is the most telling. But aren't you the League? Aren't you, Italy, part of this League of Nations you're saying can do nothing? Aren't you supposed to be stopping war? And he is, but he's starting war. And again, the fact that Britain and France aren't even looking over here, again, shows they are ignoring the issue. All this showing that the League of Nations is completely and utterly pointless. Another cartoon from the time. We've got the doormat. And we've got the fact that we've got the League of Nations too bothered about their image and having their kind of face painted to look good. But in reality, Mussolini's just stamping all over the League, not interested. And this is known as the final nail in the coffin of the League of Nations. So if you think about a coffin, something dead goes in there. So basically, they've put the League of Nations in there, probably because of the Manchuria crisis. It's maybe a little bit wobbly on its last legs. Hitler's rising back to power, so it's looking less and less likely they can stop war. But the Abyssinian crisis ended any hope for the League of Nations, because it did not stop war. It was actively engaged in helping Italy commit those war, I would say crimes, but commit war against Abyssinia. But there is also a wider impact here, and this is quite a powerful image to finish off with. It says the man who took the lid off. This here is Mussolini, and this here is like a devil or a demon, and the devil or demon is coming out of the world. And it shows Mussolini taking the lid off this. And it's saying that if Mussolini had not done the Abyssinian conflict, this devil, this demon of war might not have come out. And the demon of war, in my opinion, is Hitler, or could be seen as Hitler. Because Hitler is watching this. He's seen the League of Nations fail in Manchuria in 1931/2, but Hitler wasn't Chancellor of Germany now. And Hitler has rearmed. He has got the Tsar, which the Tsar was allowed, and he's conscripted and is rearmed. But he doesn't know how the League of Nations or Britain and France would react if he tries to, I don't know, remilitarize the Rhineland. So he waits. And he watches how this turns out to see if Britain and France really will stop war. And they don't. And Hitler realizes at this point that with Italy, they didn't stop Italy. So were they really going to stop Germany? And this is basically the beginning of the rise of Hitler. It inspires him. He doesn't think they're going to stop him from remilitarizing the Rhineland. So this is late 1935, and then we can see in the timeline by 1936, Hitler remilitarizes the Rhineland. So overall, a significant impact not only on the League of Nations, but also on Hitler. Because if this doesn't happen, or if Britain and France react and say, absolutely not, we stopped Italy dead, Germany's probably going to think they're going to do the same with us, so we don't have an option here. We're not going to take back the Rhineland, we're not going to go on our conquest of Europe. So the Abyssinian crisis is then a really significant part of our learning, especially linking to the League of Nations and with Hitler.